Welcome to King of the What Now, a podcast that talks about whatever we want. We hope you enjoy the show, or else.
Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to What Now? A Magnus Archives archive. I'm your host, Kat, and is it just me, or are the walls slowly getting closer and closer and closer? I need to get out of here!
No, you need to record this episode. I'm your co-host, Joel, and also I've recently acquired this picture of Abraham Lincoln. It's absolutely mesmerizing. If you pay attention, the eyes are just a little bit too close together and the ears are just a little bit too low on his face, but I can't stop looking away, and every time I look at it, I hear the sounds of violins getting louder and closer.
I'm just gonna put that
I'm sure
down.
It's fine.
Let's just put it down into the fire.
No, don't take it! It's mine!
Careful, you'll activate the dog.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, welcome everyone. As I said in the intro, we are talking about the Magnus Archives today. The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by Rusty Quill and is a horror anthology series that Joel and I have recently gotten very into.
Why did we get into it?
We got into it because a YouTuber by the name of Haley Whipjack made a flowchart-based Would You Survive the Horrors video, and her brief foray into it was so interesting to me that I was like, I gotta listen to that.
Right. So we are going into this mostly blind. After we watched that video and we both got interested in listening to this podcast, and then we decided we wanted to do an episode that was kind of an overview review, whatever. I didn't go back and re-listen to that video. Some of the pieces of information are still in my head, so unfortunately I'm not going in completely blind, but we are mostly going in blind, and Haley did not spoil specifics about this series.
Absolutely. We are going to stay away from foreknowledge as best we can. We're going to try to discuss just season 1. This will be our first half of the season 1 discussion next week or whenever Joel posts the episodes. I don't know. He's in charge. But we'll discuss the second half of season 1. And then who knows? Maybe we'll cover the rest of the series. Maybe we won't. But I just was like, this is fun and spooky and there's all these connections to make. We should talk about it.
I will guarantee that I will not post the part 1 and part 2 until they've both been edited, and they will go up a week apart. So that will happen, whether that means that they go out soon or whether they come out much later, because sometimes we're not good at recording. We'll see.
The very neat thing about this being a podcast is that for the people listening, the episodes happen when they happen, you know? Like,
right.
We're talking about time, but like to them, it's right now. It's
Sure.
here, it's happening.
But that was yesterday.
Time is so spooky. That should be one of the horrors. Really quick, brief overview of the plot of the Magnus Archives. There is a man named Jonathan Sims who has recently taken over as head archivist for the Magnus Institute, which is an institute that seems to study paranormal happenings. He is very frustrated because the previous archivist, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, has left the archives a mess. So the conceit of the story overall is that he is going through and recording the statements and trying to organize things.
Absolutely. And if you are... Okay, so there's people who are horror aficionados and they'll watch anything. Great, they'll probably listen to this. There's people who avoid horror like the plague. Great, they probably won't listen to this. If you're someone in the middle who dabbles in horror, but maybe there's certain things that are triggering for you or certain fears that like are too intense to engage in, even in a audio narrative, there's a website. I mean, it's the Wikipedia for it. It has trigger warnings for every episode, and eventually they start being in the actual description of the episode, but not where we are. There are 2 episodes. One episode I did not watch because Kat asked me not to, and another one that I listened to that I do not want to spend too much time on because I personally disliked the content of that episode.
There were a handful of gross episodes, yeah.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's a horror podcast, so...
Mm-hmm. So what can you tell our listeners, again, without getting into too many specifics, we'll cover that later in the episode, but what is, like, the overarching, is there more of a plot, or is it just a guy recording his notes?
Yes, so as of season 1, there seems to be more of an overarching plot, and I'm going to describe the plot of season 1, and then I'll describe what seems to be the plot overall, like, what I'm anticipating for future seasons, and you can kind of fill in as you like. So... Jonathan Sims, in the very first episode, makes it very clear that he's a skeptic, right? And by the end of the first half of season 1, I got the impression that, like, he was playing up his skepticism because he was so spooked by the stories.
Sure.
But he very much doesn't believe in this stuff. But he also says that most of the things they have in their archive he can record on his computer. The ones that we hear as listeners have to be recorded on a tape recorder because they cause audio distortion. So that's very much like these ones are real. These are the real stories, and you're not hearing any of the fake ones. As he records these, it seems as though bad things are happening. So as of episode 20, one of his people has gotten sick after going to investigate something. And we, the viewers,
absolutely know, like, oh, that's code for got eaten by something.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We're very spooked for Martin. We'll talk about characters in a minute. So that's kind of what's happening, is the horrors are creeping closer the further he delves into these real stories. Overall, the plot seems to be about him uncovering what happened to the previous archivist, so he can stop that from happening to him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've got for just this chunk of 20 episodes. I feel like we can discuss a little more about overarching plot and where we think it's going in the second half, but...
Well, and I mean, like, I think... I don't know. It's very hard for me to listen to a series like this where there's a single character kind of coming into the work every day or whatever, having experiences that happen sequentially, and not assume that there's a larger story. Like, even in something like Friends, which is supposed to be like a sitcom, there's still progressions in relationships, and sometimes characters pass away or that sort of thing. And so, like, he's talking about these horrors, he's talking about these spooky things, but you just know, like, he's skeptical. He's like, these things aren't real, but we know that there's enough details here that, like, no one would make these things up. These have to be real. And, you know, a person goes missing under mysterious circumstances, one of his assistants goes kind of missing, and so, like, you already know that there's important details going on. And you are dropped into the story midway. So there's an incident that happened in 1994 that gets referenced, and Jonathan Sims doesn't talk about it at first because why would he? It's not relevant to the recording. But then when he gets a detail, he goes, oh, that lines up with the incident. And we go, what's the incident?
The Bite of 87?
Yeah, exactly. So there's some lore details that's going on. There's some connections between different scenarios that happen. You go, oh, that's the guy from the other thing. And that's why I'm getting into this. If someone told me, do you want to listen to a horror podcast? I'd go, no, why would I? That doesn't sound fun. But if they go, hey, there's actually a secret plot happening here and some of these stories are interconnected, I go, oh, that's my jam. I'll endure the horrors if that's what it takes.
Here's a fun fact about my husband. I think he might have some fae blood in him, because if you place a puzzle in front of him, he is physically incapable of leaving until the puzzle is put together.
That's not true.
It is true. I watched you walk past, in a public place, a puzzle that was half finished, and then I watched you freeze, walk backwards, and become immersed in the puzzle.
And then I left when we had to go. I never finished the puzzle.
You have a problem.
I do have a problem.
But yes, so I really like the spooky aspect. Joel really likes the puzzle-solving aspect. Interestingly enough, this is also how I got you into Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yes,
I had you watching MatPat lore videos. So
I'm looking at the outline here of, you know, what we want to discuss in this episode. I don't see the place where we do our succinct summaries, which is usually quite early in the episode. So should I do that kind of now?
Yes. Well, see, number 1 is brief outlines of the episode.
Oh, of the episodes.
I think that is, in fact, a succinct summary. You see the word brief and the word outline. Those could be perhaps synonyms.
I saw and the plot so far, and I thought we were just giving an overarching idea of the series. Look, this podcast will serve as my posthumous account of my slow descent into idiocy. You will watch you'll listen to episodes that came out in 2020 or that we recorded in 2020, and you'll be like, this is a man who has some problems, but he seems to be doing okay. And then they're going to listen to the 2025 ones and be like, this man has more than small problems. He has many problems.
His brain has become Swiss cheese.
And then there will be 2032, the incident.
So why don't we just bounce back and forth, take turns?
Oh. Okay, we could do that too. That's fine.
Oh, what did you want to do?
I wanted to try to shotgun all 20 of them, only looking at the episode descriptions or episode titles. And if I get anything wrong, you can jump in.
Okay, do it. That sounds funny.
All right, Editor Joel, let's see if we can find some like cartoonish, like knuckle popping sound effects, you know? Like, let's do this. All right, doing a little stretch. Episode 1, a man has a spooky encounter in an alleyway late at night. Episode 2, a man comes into possession of a haunted coffin that he's not supposed to open. Episode 3, a woman watches her neighbor, I think it's a woman, a person watches their neighbor basically do strange things and then get abducted by the Fae, more or less. Episode 4, which one is this one? That guy got. Episode 4, a man finds a mysterious book that gives him physical ailments, but he decides it's too cool to put down. Episode 5, garbage delivery men find some strange things being thrown out at one address in particular. Episode 6, if you hate bugs, skip this episode. A woman is bugs, essentially. A man has sex with a woman, and then she dies, and then
Could
there's bugs.
possibly be bugs?
Yeah. 7, the Piper. This is about a war hero who can basically hear the sound of death coming. Episode 8. Wait, which one's right? A construction worker is working on a house, and there's some spooky ghosts happening there.
And a priest shows up. Remember that for later.
And then episode 9, a woman recounts growing up with her serial killer father, who's now behind bars and has since passed away. Episode 10, a man recounts all of his encounters with vampires throughout his life. Episode 11, a man has a dream about Gertrude Robinson, the previous head archivist, and basically says, hey, you gonna die, lady. Moving on. Episode 12, a woman is working at the hospital and 2 patients come in with burns all over their body, and she has a spooky experience. Episode 13, a woman goes to a funeral and then goes to a strange, mysterious graveyard dimension. Episode 14, a criminal decides to put out a hit on another criminal. He uses magic, but then something happens and he starts literally falling apart, losing fingers, toes, eyes, tongue, that sort of thing, until one day he just goes missing entirely. Episode 15, a woman goes cave diving with her sister, has an incredibly spooky experience, and her sister is never seen again. Episode 16, it's called arachnophobia. Seriously, do not listen to this one if you think that you're okay with spiders, but you get weirded out by them. Do not.
We have to talk about what I said to you about this episode. Later, though.
A man has an encounter with what's basically a ghost spider. Like, he's haunted by a spider that keeps reappearing no matter how many times he kills it. Episode 17, another spooky book. How about that? I guess a woman sees, or a person, this one's a man, sees someone take a book from a library, and then things go wrong, more or less.
You're telling me a bone turned this tale?
I did not listen to episode 18. I've heard that it's gross, but there's a strange person upstairs, and maybe they're actually a ghost or a monster or something.
I got you. Person's upstairs neighbor is making a lot of noise, and turns out it was meat all along.
I mean, we're all meat when you think about it. Okay.
The person wasn't meat, the noises were meat.
I see. Episodes 19 and 20 are a two-parter, and it is about a priest who has a run-in with possession. What he thinks is possession, but might or might not be. And those have been your succinct summaries.
That was amazing.
Thank you.
Some of those were like word for word on our summary document. I'm trying to do a red string connect all the dots kind of document. Mostly for my own amusement, but also because I'm tired of having to go to the YouTube comments to be like, was this name mentioned before? So now I have a thing where I can go, yes, I heard this name before. What did you think, just like, overall, watching your first 20 episodes?
Well, I mean, mostly I listened to them.
Nobody is laughing.
I'm laughing. Did you not hear my laugh just a second ago? I could do it again. Okay. So I think that this show is very well produced. Jonathan Sims, I think that's actually the name of the person who plays Jonathan Sims. I think that's his real life name as well. He does a great job of giving the different characters voices. The writing staff does a great job giving each character kind of their own distinct voices. So, you know, he has a couple of assistants that all have their own distinct personalities. You know which one Tim is. You know which one Martin is. And so it's all very good. And as I've already said, I'm hooked based off of the red string connections between the different episodes. I forbade myself from listening past episode 40, but until we recorded this episode, so I've been telling Kat, like, we are going to record today. Pretty please, I need to be able to listen to more of what's happening. The meta plot is so much more interesting than anything else to me.
Absolutely. I am a fan of horror. I would say a little more so.
Oh,
than
absolutely,
you.
yeah.
So I was excited for this podcast. Even if there had not been a connecting thread between episodes, I think I still would have enjoyed it. Like you said, the writing is very good. I feel like they have a good grasp on, like, human nature and what makes us kind of like, oh, is there something behind me?
And I'm sorry, not to cut you off. The episodes kind of follow a pattern, but they do such a good job of, there was this weird thing, but I could ignore it because it was a small weird thing. There was more weird things. I'm pretty weirded out, but I don't know what to do. And then, oh, the weird thing has gotten me, and I don't know. There's no escape. It's too late now.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And it's not so horrifying that I can't listen to it, right? There was one episode in the second half of season 1 where I listened to 5 minutes and then had to pause it and take a break. But otherwise, most of it I could listen, like, at bedtime while I was doing laundry or whatever and not get so spooked that I had to turn it off and not continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was worried. I spook easily. I don't like horror generally. I am getting more open to the idea because there's some interesting storytelling. But, like, if I could just have, like, bloodless horror, that would be awesome. And if no one died, if everyone just got a puppy at the end, you deal with the horrors, you get a free puppy.
Get Out really was one of the best horror movies, especially for you,
yes,
I think.
Absolutely. I was worried the episodes were going to be too scary, and especially since it's an audio-only podcast, I thought that they were going to do creepy sounds in the background and stuff, and they do a little bit for the first 40 episodes. They get more involved. I'm pretty sure that this was, like, their flagship series. I could be wrong. I need to actually look it up. But I think that the production value gets better and better, which unfortunately means that my fear that there would be gross sounds that would make me unable to listen was not true at first, but I think going forward it will be, which is real unfortunate.
Yeah, there are a couple episodes related to the bug stuff where they put squirmy bug sounds in the recording, and, like, as someone who frequently has anxiety about there being bugs on me despite there not being any visible bugs on me, That's a problem. That's worrying.
Absolutely. There was another episode, I won't give context right away, especially since it's in the second half of season 1, but there was an alarm going off, and they put the noise in there, and I get it's for realism, but, like, that's the sort of thing that makes me actually want to punch a wall. I hate it.
Yep. Repetitive sounds are no good. But other than that, yeah, I'm really, really impressed.
Right. And I also, something else that I really like is I think that the first 2 or 3 episodes are among their strongest. Like, I don't know if they necessarily have weak episodes. They have episodes where I'm not as invested, so I guess that counts as weak. But, like, the monster or the entity or the being or the horror in episodes 1 and 2 are very, like, what is going on here? And I think that I don't know if they did that on purpose. If they had, like, 8 ideas written down, they took the 2 strongest ones. But, like, you will know if this is your vibe or not after listening to the first 2 episodes.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to touch on under general impressions? I didn't really introduce the characters in our brief outline the way I wanted to. Our recurring characters, who are, like, really important, are Jonathan Sims, the archivist, his boss, Elias.
Right.
His assistants, Sasha, Tim, and Martin.
Right.
And then the ghost of Gertrude Robinson.
The 3 assistants are the smart one, who I kind of think of as a teacher's pet, even though I don't know if that's accurate, the timid one, and then the himbo. Those are their kind of overall personalities.
Also, the funniest thing that I found out when I was re-listening to these episodes and, like, looking at trivia for recording is that Jonathan Sims, the author, so he named the character after himself, and then he made his favorite assistant has the same name as his wife. So he made his wife his favorite assistant. I think that's cute.
I mean, that's pretty good. And like I said, you immediately know these assistants apart from one another, and they're all endearing in their own ways.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing that I think is kind of cute and funny is that, like, Jonathan Sims, the character, is reading these statements into his tape recorder, but he's like voice acting them.
Right.
And there's at least one episode in this first chunk of episodes where somebody interrupts him and he switches back to his normal Jonathan Sims voice, and it's so jarring and funny. It's like, were you a theater kid, John? Is this your passion?
Well, and it's not just that he has a reading voice. It's not like, hello, this is me talking normally, and this is me reading the book. I do think that the voice actor does a pretty good job of using different cadences in order to give each character their own tone.
Yeah, it's very immersive. Like, you forget that it's Jonathan across all of them.
I will say, this is just a really silly side note. It has nothing to do with anything. But sometimes I will forget that the statement giver can be a woman because it's Jonathan speaking. So they'll say something like, I was uncomfortable around the man, but then he said he was gay and I felt much safer. And I was like, what? Oh, because it's a woman giving the statement, not a man. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, you kind of have to pay attention at the very beginning.
Right.
So if we're done with general impressions...
General impressions,
I'm going to reverse our next 2 points as I have them written down on the list. What are your favorite episodes from these 20?
Yeah, it's so funny. We write these outlines so that we know what we're going to talk about, and theoretically I could use them to prepare what I want to say, but then I don't. Episode 2 has the delivery of this mysterious coffin, do not open, also the name of the episode, and it is delivered and then retrieved at the end of the episode by a company called Breaker and Sons.
Breakin and Hope.
Breakin and Hope deliveries. I will give a very small, teeny, tiny spoiler. It turns out that there's 2 delivery men, and they are Breakin and Hope, and I love them. I love them so much.
Just big Cockney English guys.
Yeah, exactly. Coming through, package. Here's a package for you. Let's see. Looking at my list.
They remind me, while you look at your list, they remind me of the 2, what do you call it? When a villain has people
the henchmen.
underneath them. Henchmen. They remind me of the 2 henchmen from 101 Dalmatians.
It's been too long since I've seen that, but I believe you.
They're big British Cockney dudes.
So from a lore perspective of that's so interesting, I really like the vampire killer episode. He gives enough details that whatever these things are, and by the way, there's not just one horror. It's not like there's one thing that lurks in the shadow and they keep finding different manifestations of it. There's all sorts of weird, spooky things happening. But he describes these creatures, and I want to know more. Where did they come from? What's going on? The Piper episode, the one about the war general, was a really well done episode that honestly feels like it's from a different series. It in the timeline, the statement was from the 1920s or the 1910s, and so it just has a different feel to it. And it was just really interesting.
That was my number 1 favorite episode from this first chunk. I thought it was just beautiful. It made me think about war and sacrifice and...
Right.
Because World War I was the really shitty war.
Yeah, that's the one where people died of infection in the trenches and stuff. So.
Yeah. And the poet who is being discussed in this statement, he's a real person.
Right.
And you can read his poetry, and they tied things he wrote into this episode.
Right. Yeah, it was a really cool episode. I just, like I said, it kind of feels like a alternate universe kind of story, or not related to the story. It will be. We'll find out later, but I also really like episode 3, Across the Street. That's the one with the woman who is watching her neighbor and spooky stuff happens. I think that you can divide these episodes into kind of 3 broad categories. The gross episodes, which I don't care for at all. I listen to those, I'm like, why do you make me listen to this? But part of horror is being uncomfortable, so I get that. You have the truly scary episodes, and then you have the, intriguing, mildly spooky episodes. And those ones are always interesting to me because, there's usually an element of unreality that I don't think I'm ever going to feel in my real life unless I get an episode of psychosis or something, right? Or bad drugs in the system. I'm not going to experience them, but it's so interesting that there's there's these things that can transport you to a weird cemetery universe, or that can change the size of the cave that you're inside and stuff like that. I really think that those episodes are neat.
Absolutely.
And episode 3 was that. Why is this guy acting so weird? Why is, what was that thing that went into his house? Why was there hooks on his window that disappeared. Like, I seriously, even with the foreknowledge I have no idea why an element of his apartment disappeared.
That's the fingers of the creature as it was pulling itself over the window.
Oh my god. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, go on.
You know what I think is interesting about that episode? Because you're right, that was a really good episode. So we're going to talk about it because this is my podcast. In a lot of these statements, the statement giver themselves is not a reliable narrator for the situation. And so, like, the amount of obsession she had over watching him definitely was being influenced, and, like, she plays it off as, like, very normal, and I don't think even Jonathan really comments on it that much by the end, but, like, she became addicted to watching this guy. And I'm curious if she had stopped watching him, if the creature would have started hunting her instead, or, like, what the deal was with that.
Yeah, this feels like there are definitive rules and you can almost puzzle them out, but not quite. Mm-hmm. So, again, just it's a top-class podcast. The Magnus Archives series has finished at 200 episodes, 40 episodes per season. If we continue covering the show, I think it will be in 20-episode chunks like we're doing right now. There is another series that I don't want you to say anything about it, that it's a second series in the same universe. And so, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this will become a Rusty Quill podcast.
Oh, yeah, the Magnus Archives will return.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Any other episodes that stood out as favorites to you?
I mean, as someone who's really interested in the lore, any episode with a spooky book from the Leitner Library, very interesting. And any episode with anyone with the last name Key. There's two, and I thought one of them was going to be more important than the other, but then they stopped being. So the first time you meet them, it's Mary, and she talks about her son, and it feels like the son is doing like he's the delivery man. He's like the one doing the jobs for her, but she's the one calling the shots. But then throughout the rest of the season, you don't see Mary ever again, but you see Gerard quite a few times.
He sure does show up an awful lot.
Right.
Yes.
Eye imagery all over the place. What's going on with that?
Absolutely. My favorite episode, like I said, was the Piper. I really, really loved that episode. Just, even as a standalone thing, I think it was a beautiful story, which is a weird thing to say about an episode of a horror podcast, but it was. I also really liked A Father's Love. I am a sucker for anything about dads because I'm very close to my own dad. It also reminded me of a book, which I looked up the title for and then forgot to have written down, so give me one moment. The title of the book was Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. It was also about a woman whose father was a serial killer and the spooky thing that lived in their house and ate bad feelings.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good book. It was very, like, mystery-oriented more than horror-oriented, but this is not a Sarah Gailey podcast, as much as I love their work.
I was going to say the serial killer episode is very interesting. So like I said, we have some foreknowledge from Haley Whipjack, just very broad 10,000-foot view type stuff. Sometimes the foreknowledge makes things make sense. So again, the eye imagery with the Key family, I got that. I was like, oh, I think I know how that relates to the stuff that Haley talked about in her video. But then sometimes I listen to an episode and I go, I have no idea what's happening in this episode with the foreknowledge that I have. And the serial killer dad was one of them. So this woman's, I mean, she was a girl at the time, but her mom disappears when she was like 7 or something. And her dad, from that point on, started doing murders, but she didn't know it at the time. And then eventually he was discovered having done like 40 murders, I think. I think it was 47, because he gets stabbed in the prison cell 47 times. And I feel like that's one for each victim. Anyways, but the night when he gets caught by the police, the night of his final murder/sacrifice, there was like a creepy darkness that was trying to get her, and she went into the shed, and when the dad finished the ritual, the darkness went away. So like, he wasn't just a random guy who was doing murders, he was a guy who was driving back the darkness? Okay, that's fine. Again, there's Fae rules. I don't know what they are, but they're clearly there. Something about knife drove back darkness.
Absolutely. Some important things to note also about this episode. The mom had a pendant, which was it was hands with a closed eye.
Yes.
We see that image in particular show up in Mary Key and Gerard Key's shop, and then also in other places with Gerard.
Well, and they kind of tell you, like, point blank that this is very important. Here's something. I don't know when we're going to talk about this exactly. We took a lot of notes, and I don't think we're going to cover them all. But there's a guy named Lightner, and he has books, spooky books trying to eat you. And there was an incident in 1994, I think. Yeah, there was an incident in 1994, and he disappeared in 1995. But also, the church that has the closed eye and the hand symbol that the detective's wife was in, the People's Church of the Divine Host, this weird cult religion thing, it disbanded. It fractured in 1994. Or 1995, like right around there. So, like, those two are definitely connected. I don't know if Jonathan Sims knows that they're connected, but I think we're supposed to pick up on that.
We have made the connection, yes. Also, when we see the same symbol in Mary and Gerard's house in the form of a painting, there's a caption that says, "Grant us the sight that we may not know. Grant us the scent that we may not catch. Grant us the sound that we may not call." These are spooky f***ing people.
These are very spooky And wait, hang on, while we're on the topic, the episode with the two burn victims that come into the hospital, one of them is Gerard Key. He has eye tattoos all over his body, so the eye is just the symbol of the Key family.
And the eyes are the only spots on his body that aren't badly burned.
Except, so yes, he's burned from the neck down, and anywhere that he had eye tattoos, he did not get burned. But also the burns abruptly stop at the neck. And he says something later, I think, about, like, was I administered with a necklace? So he had some kind of charm that prevented the fire from taking the rest of him. But also, that nurse figures out or realizes that the other burn victim is causing the horrors in the hospital, and he seems to be some kind of, like, I don't know, fire demon. She doesn't describe anything about him, but he's chanting, and it's causing there to be, like, heat rising through the hospital, and people are, like, disappearing. They're fine. They come back. But when Gerard is like, I'm going to kill this guy and prevent all of the evils, there's a moment when she could have stopped him, when she could have asked him what was happening, and she decided to step out of the way and not ask. And he says to her, yes, for you, better beholding than the lightless flame. We've heard of the lightless flame somewhere else. I can't remember which episode, but he seems to be indicating that she had a choice, that she could be thing A or thing B, and the thing A is beholding, and thing B is the lightless flame. Now again, we're trying not to go into future knowledge, but the guy that was killed seemed to be doing stuff with heat, and when he died, heat went away. The other guy, Gerard, has a bunch of eyes on his body, and he says something about, like, better beholding. And afterwards, the nurse said that she felt like she has this odd sensation of being watched without it being malicious. So there's some kind of eye cult that she got abducted into, or inducted into, because she decided to watch a fire demon get murdered. But if she had tried to stop Gerard, I think she would have become a fire demon instead.
Absolutely,
Choose your Hogwarts class, but it's monsters.
The two-parter at the end of this chunk of episodes are my other favorite episodes, and there is a part in episode 19 where he says that he cried out for protection and felt something that was not God answer him. Without opening his mouth and actually speaking, he recounts saying the words, "I am not for you. I am marked." So again, we've got this fire presence, right? He was overtaken by heat and he was going to burn to death, being stopped by somebody pledging their allegiance to something else. So that's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
These episodes I felt like were really effective psychological horror. I know they didn't work quite so well for you.
Depends on which episode, right?
The idea of not knowing what you're doing.
Oh, these two episodes specifically. I'm sorry, I thought you meant the season. I was like, some of them are better than... Okay, but yes. Go on.
No, these two episodes specifically. The idea of not knowing what you're doing and completely, like, doing the opposite of what you would do as a person. So just to describe these episodes a little more clearly,
less succinctly.
This guy is called in to do an exorcism of a young girl. He starts having spooky things happen to him, and then she dies, and he has this slow descent into alcoholism before finally eating a couple people.
Yes, without realizing that's what he was doing.
Right, exactly. He thinks he's giving mass. And he says a few times, like, I was in control of my actions at every step. I could have stopped at any time. I just didn't. Whatever is possessing him has taken away his ability to say God or Jesus.
Right.
As of the future, and he can't pray anymore. So he's just having a really bad time. But, like, can you imagine the most important thing to you being corrupted and, like, twisted like that? That sounds awful.
It does sound awful. When I was listening to these episodes, I think I texted you and said, like, these 2 episodes might be the weakest for me in terms of horror. My understanding of the general tropes of horror is a lot of times it is someone who transgresses in some way. They do something they're not supposed to do, and then there's a punishment for it. And if they escape, usually it's because they kind of, like, in some manner, kind of atone for what they did. And if they die, it's usually because they couldn't overcome whatever character flaw or whatever thing that they did, right? In the Alien movies, you go to a place where the aliens are, and now you're being attacked by the aliens. There's other ones, right? You do a ritual to summon a demon, and then the demon starts messing with you. That sucks. But I felt like the guy didn't do anything wrong, and maybe that's part of the horror, right? Sometimes the universe is chaotic and you can't control it. But he never thought he was... So, like... He thinks he's giving a prayer or a mass. I don't know the terms. I've never been to a Catholic thing in my life. Not a single Catholic event once in my life. But he thinks he's giving a sermon, and then he's going to eat the cracker or the cookie or whatever, and he eats it, and then he wakes up and he realizes that he's eating like a person. But he never thought... I think it would be better if he thought he was attacking a demon or something, and then he woke up and he was attacking an innocent person. Like, that feels more like he made a choice to do a thing and it ended up biting him in the butt. This one feels like something kind of took control of him. He still had his own actions, but he couldn't trust anything around him. He couldn't trust that he was in the room he was in, that he was saying the words he was saying, that he was touching the things he was touching. And that sounds like a unique horror, but it's just completely out of the guy's hands. He could have thought he was singing a daunty little tune, and then it would have been like, and I woke up and I'd murdered 4 people with an axe.
See, it being completely out of his hands is what's so horrifying to me.
Yeah.
You know? Like, if I thought I was having delicious chocolate cake, and then I opened my eyes and it was a dog, I'd be so upset.
Yeah,
and it
that's
wouldn't
true.
matter that it wasn't my fault. Like, something made me eat a dog. How could I ever eat chocolate cake again when it could be a dog?
Yeah, he basically loses his mind, and I get that. I don't know. Some of these I had a visceral reaction where I was like, oh. But then some of these I just was kind of like, this is like I feel like I am an alien looking in on someone's life, and I go, yes, that person had an emotional reaction. I get it.
Now you know what it's like to be me most of the time. I think these are easily the episodes with the most clever writing of this set of episodes, too. He's talking about hallucinations and not being able to trust his perceptions. And the whole time he's describing this failed exorcism where the girl ended up dying, he talks about how people are angry at him. The doctors were angry at him when she died, and his fellow priests were angry at him and asked him to take a step back from exorcisms. And the first time I listened, it really didn't make any sense to me because, like, you're right, he didn't do anything wrong. He was just there, and he was just doing the job that she had asked him to do. But listening to it over again, he says in episode 20, by this point, I was starting to suspect I was having hallucinations of some sort. Maybe none of this was real. We have no idea what actually happened because we have a character who is completely unreliable. Like, anything he's described could have been something else. And I think that's really interesting, too. It kind of puts you as the listener into this, like, uncomfortable, unreal place.
Yeah, okay. I like it. I will say, again, these monsters, whatever they are, seem to follow rules. The episode with the man who got the coffin delivered to his suite, by finding a way to prevent himself from opening it, he survived the horrors. And then at the end of the episode, John, a mysterious man we don't know, he shows up and he's like, oh, good to see you. You're still alive. So he was surprised that the guy was able to survive, but you can survive if you do the right thing. But it's not like it's obvious what the right thing is in the moment. The priest guy, he gave a sermon and he was wearing a ghastly yellow thingy, the color ribbon. Vestment, thank you. And apparently sickly yellow is not one of the pre-approved colors from God. It's supposed to be like red or blue or violet or something like that.
The Catholic Church has colors and they mean things, but I couldn't tell you what the colors mean.
Right.
But yellow is not one of them.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. There are certain colors that are good, and this color was not good. But the post follow-up that Jonathan Sims gives, there was one of those delivered to a church a couple of days before the incident. So there's some kind of like the item had to physically be delivered. The priest could not have been in Istanbul and doing this murder thing because the thing was delivered to somewhere in England, if that makes sense. I want to know what the rules are.
I like the rules being a little bit soft.
Yeah.
But I know you like to know all the rules.
Well, I want to know... Yeah, I mean, I guess I do. I want to feel like I'm the sort of guy who likes soft magic rules where we don't... Everything's aren't exactly explained. I'm losing my mind. But I think that I want to know... I want to know if there's a way that the horrors are picking specific targets. Some of them make sense. The cave diving episode, she loves cave diving, she gets attacked by a cave, more or less. It's not exactly a cave, but like that's it. The episode called Alone, she talks about how she loved being alone, she found the one man in the world who made her not feel alone, then he died, she felt alone again, but worse this time, and her family told her, don't you want to be alone? And then she was transported to a weird graveyard dimension where there was no one, not even corpses. So like, oh, there's something going on here with being alone. But sometimes it's like, I was a priest, and now I'm having hallucinations. I don't see those two being connected exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of them are random, some of them are, the connection is obvious.
Yes, absolutely. Such as in Arachnophobia, where there were spiders, and the bad thing is spiders. So I want to talk about episodes we found particularly scary, but I also want to talk about Arachnophobia in particular. Joel has a slight phobia of spiders.
I hate spiders.
I feel like he's gotten better about it since he's been married to me, a person who loves spiders and won't tolerate slander.
I had a tarantula on my hand at one point.
You held it. I was so proud of you. Yes. So, Joel has a slight phobia of spiders. I listened to this episode, and I went, Joel, I think you're safe to watch the Arachnophobia episode because it's just a ghost spider. There's a spider on the wall, the man squishes it. Later, there's a spider somewhere else, the man squishes it. Ooh, not scary at all. But you know what I forgot, listeners? You know what I forgot? The reason he's being haunted by a ghost spider is because apparently when he was a kid, he tripped and he fell into a spider nest, and there were lots of spiders. And I'm not going to give more details than that because I don't want to freak Joel out. But Joel was very upset with me.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I wasn't necessarily upset with you. I was upset with the episode. It's the only episode that actually gave me a visceral, like, I want to scream reaction because it was one of the few that actually get some. Okay, so take the episode Squirm, the woman who was Bugs. He talks about how she was moving unnaturally, and you as the reader, listener, can tell immediately, like, that woman has something inside of her. You might have thought that it was one thing. It was actually dozens of things. But, like, I see Catherine is having a reaction right now because she's picturing it. But, like, sometimes I can let these images just kind of, like, gently bounce off my mind.
The
like
smooth meat.
Yeah, I think of it for a second and I go, that would be pretty gross. I'm just not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about what it would... any of the tactile sensations that would happen in this moment. But the spider one was so bad that I couldn't let it bounce off my head. So that's why it was the most disturbing episode to me, because, like, it's my own personal phobia. And if it was just a story about a guy who hated spiders and every time he turned around a corner there was another spider there and, like, he died of, I don't know, a heart attack or something because he got so scared, that would not affect me because, like, oh, a spooky story happened to someone else, wouldn't happen to me. But as soon as it's like, hey, we're going to describe something that, like, viscerally happened. No, stop.
I thought this episode was weird because he emphasizes really hard, like really insistently at the beginning, that he's never been bothered by spiders, that he's not afraid of spiders, but that he won't suffer them to live in his presence. What a weird fucking thing to say.
I've got the Magnus Archive formula this early in the series. Maybe they change it up later. A person insists that they are not afraid of something or that something doesn't bother them, by the end of the episode, they are now bothered by that thing because something has happened.
It's always, I was never bothered by until, or I used to love, but now.
Yeah.
Speaking of I used to love, but now, Lost John's Caves was so upsetting for me to listen to. I'm very mildly claustrophobic. Tight spaces, when it's just me, don't bother me unless it was like, I was trapped in like a cave the size of my body. What's described in this episode. But minorly claustrophobic like in crowds and things, right? But like you said, I kind of imagine the visceral sensations, and imagining somebody like wiggling their way through a cave that is fit to their body is terrifying to me.
Yep.
That's horrible. And then to add on to that, she's trapped in this cave underwater, and the cave just keeps going forever, and she never finds like the surface. And then there's stuff with her sister, and it was bad.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
So creepy.
I don't know how I forgot about this detail somehow, but so this woman loves, is there a specific name for it? Is it just cave diving?
Caving.
Okay, she loves caving. She goes with her sister caving. Her sister doesn't really like caving, but likes to go with the statement giver. And then the point of view is from the person who survived. I mean, obviously, ghosts can't record into a recorder, or can they?
Or can they?
But she had a recorder with her where she was like taking video of different stuff, and they recover it later. And there's a part of her just whispering over and over again, "Take her, not me." And the sister's the one that gets taken. And so that is an extra level of horror to it, because she doesn't remember. So it's like you did this horrible thing, but you don't even remember. Or maybe she did and she just didn't want to talk about it. But that's exactly what I was talking about with the exorcism of the priest episode. She did a thing. Undeniably, she chose to do a thing, and the consequences were awful. And to me, that's more of a gut punch.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan at the end is like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to tell her that we found this recording of her saying that.
That's right. That's right.
I want to talk about the man upstairs really quick. This episode was not scary. It was disgusting. And I feel like you have to distinguish between disgusting and scary when you're talking about horror, because some people say horror and they mean one and not the other. I like to be scared. I do not like to be disgusted. I get very skin crawly. I mentioned the things with the bugs earlier, but like disease or bugs or whatever, like if it can infest your body, it upsets me.
And I personally, I don't think it's hard to tell a disgusting story. There was more bodily fluid than there should be. There was bodily fluid in places it shouldn't be. Like, bam, disgusting, immediately.
You did it, yeah. No, it's not hard. And I also throw up really easily. Maybe I shouldn't tell the internet that, because, my parents like to play tricks on me, and they have played tricks on me related to that in the past. But I get ill really, really easily. And so if something especially disgusting is being described, there's a good chance I'm going to throw up, which is not pleasant for anyone. So this episode is about a guy who moves into a flat, and his upstairs neighbor is hammering all the time. And it's really loud and it's annoying. And eventually he goes up there to be like, "Hey guy, could you effing stop?" And the guy is like, and then shuts the door. And there's a very strong, unpleasant smell. I'm going to try to describe this without gagging. It's an unpleasant smell. Eventually, unpleasant smell starts leaking into the statement giver's apartment. There's a weird stain on his ceiling. He hires some people to come check it out, and they pop it, and stuff gushes out. Like pussy stuff.
You can just say stuff.
Yeah, I know. I just want people to get
you want everyone else to be as disgusted as you are.
I'm doing it. It's okay. I'm fine. They go upstairs, and it turns out this guy has nailed meat to every surface.
Specific,
and
like, types? Like
just meat. Just meat. No clue where he's getting the meat. So we can draw connections to a later episode in our part 2, because they explicitly say, like, where could he have gotten all of that meat from?
Right.
But there's so many layers of it that it's rotting, and they're describing, like, the maggots and stuff. The one thing that's weird and interesting that you might be interested in is there is a man-sized pile of meat that looks at the statement giver.
Oh, it's Jeff! Jeff the Meat Man! Amazing!
And it, like, moves, and then he turns around, and when he looks back, the Meat Man Jeff is gone.
Oh.
So...
He's in your walls.
Anyway, I did a really good job not throwing up describing that. I came close.
Absolutely.
It was a very gross episode, and I did not care for it.
Right.
But, like, in terms of being actually scared, I can't believe I didn't mention... Wait. Okay, I want to talk about the Bone Turner's Tale in a second, but in terms of being actually scared, I would say that really the cave one is the only one that got me in this chunk of episodes. Maybe the watching one, because, like, I was kind of spooked by my windows afterward.
That one's pretty spooky. The one that I described about the garbage people, it's almost too, like, soft-core to be scary to me personally, but they find a bunch of weird stuff being thrown out at a house. It's a bunch of dolls' heads that have been, like, scraped on the ground like they were, like, tied behind a truck or something like that. Different dolls' heads, too. It's not, like, one doll, like, 400 copies of it. And then they get a really long single sheet of strip of paper with the Lord's Prayer on it in Latin over and over again with some burn marks. And then the third one is a bunch of human teeth. No, yes, human teeth. They eventually discover it is human. The main... Okay, so because the person who is recording the statement has to survive to give the statement, the horrors almost always affect someone else, or they briefly escape, or, long enough to give the statement. But one of the other garbage people gets, like, obsessed with this house. And it's like, I'm gonna find the person who's leaving that stuff there, because they call the police, and the people who own the house are like, no, we didn't throw out human teeth. 2,780 copies of the same tooth in different states of decay.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. So this guy, I think his name is Alan, he's like, I'm gonna keep watching them, and he sends a text to our statement giver that says, found him. And then our guy goes, because there's only one place that this guy could possibly be talking about, and he's nowhere to be found. There is another sack, because the weird things always come in like a secondary sack that's not in the garbage can. And inside is a heart. Not a Valentine's heart, a human atomically correct heart made of maybe brass or something, or copper, that has the missing man's name on it. Oh my god.
That was pretty spooky.
It's
the garbage man who found the heart, he would survive the horrors because he burned it.
Yeah. He's like, get rid of it. 100%. I do want to say, in terms of general vibes, my favorite episodes are, and this is weird because it was like the one only episode of Supernatural that actually freaked me out was the Changeling one. But any episode that has to do with like people that are clearly not people are the most interesting. So in the one with the woman watching her neighbor, she sees something go into her neighbor's apartment. She calls the police because she thinks that she doesn't know what it is, but it's clearly like not human or it's dangerous. And then when the police arrive, it is a different person wearing the clothes of her neighbor. And basically he gets away with it. He goes like, ha, I look different than my passport photo, don't I? And the police go, yeah, you look different. And then they leave. And then he's just been replaced. There is no more Graham. There is not Graham. And then he immediately goes to the window and stares at our main character before closing the window. What is happening here? His last line in the episode? It's amazing, Julie or Amy or whatever your name is, how long we can see someone without truly knowing them. I hope to see more of you soon. That's so good. And it describes a pattern. Graham, the guy who went missing, he probably did the neighbor spotting thing too. These two houses are fated to constantly, one's always watching the other, and whoever is the real one gets eaten by the other one, and then it happens again.
That's spooky for real, yeah. No, I thought that was a really good episode. I said I wanted to jump back to the Bone Turner's Tale really quick. Mm-hmm. I did not really get that episode. Just insofar as, like, it felt very different from the rest, and kind of like how you said, in horror, it seems like people transgress in some way, and that's why bad things happen. Spooky Book is delivered to the library. It's stolen bad things happen to the guy it's stolen from, and our statement giver is just or stolen by, and our statement giver is just sort of there.
Yeah.
So that felt kind of strange to me, but I loved this episode because this librarian, when confronted with the macabre and horrible, punches it in the face.
First says, sorry, we're closed, because he goes to the library to get this book that's bleeding, and this monster crashes through the window, and he goes, we are closed, and then it says, like, I don't know, give me the book or something. He just decks it.
Amazing. I love that scrappy librarian. I hope he has a great rest of his life.
This episode with the Bonehurst tale is lore relevant. Later, I know that for a fact, and it's related to more episodes than you think it's related to.
Oh.
But the way it was written was very strange. It felt like there was like a time skip in there, or like they're trying not to show us too much of what's happening, but it left me, and it sounds like it left you, with a sense of like, was that it? Like, what? And like, okay, so in the book page turner, in the episode page turner, this guy finds a book and he opens it and he just gets obsessed with it. He's like, whoa, this is really cool. And apparently he was staring at it for like an hour before he bought it or something. In the Bone Turner's Tale, a guy sees a book. I don't even think he opens it. I think he just sees the cover and he immediately goes, mine now, and then leaves. Mm-hmm. What's going on with that? So yeah, hopefully this gets cleared up. I actually wrote in my notes, the guy goes missing for a couple of weeks, and his mom shows up, and her bones are all messed up. And so I went, that's the perfect place for another statement to be given. Because sometimes they do that. They'll have a character show up, and they'll be like, yes, on the 9th of March, I was attacked by a clown with a knife, and the only other person in the room with me was a man named Jim. And then, like, 3 months later, real world time, they release an episode. It's like, hi, my name is Jim. I was fighting a breakdancing giraffe. And I ran into a room to escape the breakdancing giraffe, and I just saw a man running from a clown with a knife. You're like, I know that guy, the clown with the knife guy.
The clown with the man with the knife. Ready for one of my favorite memes from 2016 to be brought into the present?
Oh, sure.
That's not a book, that's bone-hurting juice.
It is a book, though. There's stories in there about...
Yes. I also really quickly wanted to call out Piecemeal. I'm actually surprised neither of us mentioned this episode as a favorite.
It is a good episode.
Because the Fae stuff was kind of interesting. So this guy, he goes to a witch and he says, I want that guy dead. And she goes, cool, we will make it happen. He gets tired of waiting, and he goes and he kills the guy himself.
Because he expected the other guy to, like, just mysteriously vanish, to be shot in the street, something to happen to him, and he seems to be fine.
Right, and when he goes to the guy, by the way, the guy's missing body parts. He's missing some teeth, he's missing an eye, he's missing a couple fingers. Very spooky, very bad, very weird.
Also tries to tell the guy, wait, don't do this.
Yes, exactly. He then starts getting boxes. Inside the box, each time is a body part. So the first time I think it's a thumb or his pinky.
It's a finger, yeah.
And then immediately upon opening the box, he loses a body part, whichever body part was in the box. So it's his thumb the first time, then he trips and he cuts his own thumb off with his knife he was holding, right? He eventually goes to the witch and he's like, make it stop? What's happening? And she says, word for word, some hungers are too much to be denied.
Yeah, so... if he had been patient and let the other guy die, the hunger would have been satiated, would have had its life. But because he stole the kill, he became the target of it. Also, he tried to assault this old lady, and he doesn't remember what happened, but he woke up with a hand missing. So she is not a witch. She is something else.
She's something, for sure.
She's a Zoan-type devil fruit user who turned into a velociraptor and ate his hand and then transformed back into an old lady.
But this is not a One Piece podcast.
It was!
Ayo! But yeah, that was a pretty good spooky episode. Jonathan mentions that when they went to his apartment later, or when the police went to his apartment later to investigate, it was just full of hundreds of those tiny boxes that his body parts had been delivered in.
Am I stupid? I've listened to that episode twice now, and both times what I interpreted as is basically he broke into pieces and then each piece was sealed in a box, but I'm just now realizing that's not what it was. He was delivered these boxes saying, here's the body parts you're gonna lose. Why did I make that mistake? I have no idea.
That's okay.
Oh, Goblin in the recording studio. Goblin. What does this button do?
Eat files!
Delete. Yum, 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 yum.
Hey, what are you doing? Get out of here! Oh, shit. Alright, so, here I was, I was editing the Magnus Archives Season 1 Part 1 episode.
Magnus Archives Archives.
The Magnus Archives Archive, the one shop for all of your Magnus Archive needs, except for the RustyQuillPodcast.com or whatever. And I got about 40 minutes in, and it just cut off. Now, what happened is that we paused the recording because I think our dogs were barking, and I went to go let them outside or see what they were doing, because you don't want bogs darking. You don't want dogs barking on your podcast, and the second part of the recording is just lost to history. So obviously this is a target attack by the horrors. They are trying to prevent us from releasing information on them.
We were on to something, and now it's lost.
Yeah.
And as you all know, our brains are colanders, and thoughts just kind of fall out the holes like loose spaghetti. So we may be able to remember some of those thoughts, but many of them may just be lost.
Yes. So I've re-listened to the first episode. I mean, obviously I was listening to it as I was editing, but also I listened to it again after I finished editing to try and make sure that we don't repeat ourselves, but I also want to make sure that we get all of our thoughts out. Also, even if we decide to cut it here, we can say, sorry guys, we lost the recording, we're too tired, we're not going to re-record. I do at least want to acknowledge why we suddenly were like mid-thought and then just disappeared. Okay, so I'm going to go down the list of episodes and I'm going to see if we have any thoughts. And I'm also going to try to point out ones we've talked about at length. Episode 1, Anglerfish. Having now listened to many more episodes, spoiler alert, I didn't realize that we lost the recording, so we started listening to Season 2 and I finished Season 2 Part 1, but smoking is like an important thing. If you pay attention to characters who are smoking a lot, I think that's you touch your nose in a, like, I get that. I understand you're telling me something.
I just made a connection.
Okay.
Elias was like, John isn't smoking again, is he?
Oh.
Did John have, like, a run-in with the anglerfish or some similar sort of spooky?
I mean, it could be that. It could have a double meaning, but I certainly took it as more of a concern for his health. But also that was technically in the second half of Season 1, so we're not supposed to know that right now.
Beans.
It's our brains, giant holes. And our holes, giant brains. So,
I don't have any holes.
Do Not Open introduced Breakin' and Hope.
Your boys.
My boys. Across the Street, talked about it extensively. Page Turner, very first time we get a spooky book. Why? I want to know why some people are drawn to the books. Because some people, like, he went on a date with that girl, I can't remember her name, but he showed her the book and he's like, oh, I don't like it, it gave me a sense of vertigo, but, like, he couldn't put it down. So, like, does everyone already have a Leitner book that calls to them specifically, and everyone else is just like, it's just a book, man?
I think he, in particular, was susceptible to that book because he had a connection.
That experience when he was younger.
Yeah.
We are going to mention this in in Season 1, Part 2. God, this is so confusing. But the childhood friend, Michael Crew, he is also referenced by name in The Bone Turner's Tale. I think I intentionally left that out of the last recording because I forgot that those were both in Season 1, Part 1, but interesting. Pay attention to Michael Crew's name. Thrown Away we talked about. Squirm That Lady Was Bugs. The Piper we really liked. Burned Out. Do you remember? Oh, that's the construction worker who thought he had schizophrenia. Look Out for the Fractals. A Father's Love. Serial Killer. You really like that because you're close to your dad. Okay, Vampire Killer. I think we talked about it. I said it was an interesting lore episode, but what do you think the vampires are? Because the episode goes out of its way for Trevor to say he doesn't think that they convert other people to vampires. So, like, where do you think they come from? Is there a den of vampires and they one by one enter society?
Okay, so the theory I have is partially based on something from Season 2.
Okay.
So I'm going to be a touch vague, but I think the vampires are creations of the entities, and they haven't gotten it right yet.
Oh, okay, so they're trying to create human-like life, and they create this. The thing about it is, like, you have different episodes with different creatures. There's a lot of bug episodes. Have we gotten that episode yet? Okay, no, that's part 2 where we talk about it. We have a lot of fire that's going on. And so I'm more wondering if a specific type of thing created it. Is there a Lightner tome that turns people into vampires, and we're just meeting all of the various people who've come into contact with the book? Spoiler alert, Season 2 makes it very clear what they are, in my opinion. If you have just the right amount of foreknowledge, it's slapping you in the face when you get to a specific episode.
Oh, dang, is that an episode I haven't gotten to yet?
Yeah, that's the one I was asking you about earlier, if you'd listen to it. Okay, Dreamer, the guy who dreamed of Gertrude Robinson's death. Are there other dreamers, do you think?
Dreams seem to be important.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say yes. But I want to know why he was dreaming people's deaths.
Yes.
Like, why him specifically? That was a weird episode.
It was. That one was a very, like, hey, I'm pointing you towards the larger narrative kind of a thing. First Aid we talked about pretty extensively. Alone, she got sent to the graveyard dimension. Piecemeal, we talk about that. A gangster gets turned into itty-bitty pieces. Lost John's Cave freaked you out. Arachnophobia I fucking hated. Bone Turner's Tale, Man Upstairs. You were very brave, talking about the details to the point of almost gagging on mic, which you could have stopped at any time, just to be clear. You could have said it's a creepy
was not
episode.
Holding a gun to my head. Here's the thing. I sometimes forget what a weak gag reflex I have. So it's not like I think, like, oh, this thing is going to make me sick. I start talking about it, and my stomach just goes, nope.
That's true. It's like if you know that you have a food allergy, that's not going to kill you, not like the peanut allergy, but like if you're lactose intolerant, you might forget how bad your tummy gets upset if you drink a milkshake. And you drink a milkshake, you're like, I've made the worst mistake of my life.
That's never happened to anyone in this house. We don't have whatever the butthole horror is.
Yeah, I know. We certainly don't. Episode 19 and 20, the priest episode, we talked about at length. So it turns out we actually covered quite a bit of the significant episodes already.
Fantastic. Good job, team.
Yes. The thing that I did not want to lose by losing part of the recording, and I apologize if it seems like we're rushing, I really just don't want to repeat ourselves, and we've talked about most... You know what? There is something that I have to pull up on my document really quick. Alright. I think that 2 a.m. is very important. It gets mentioned specifically. There's some episodes where, like, oh yeah, something happened at 11, and I tried to, like, pay attention to, like, all the times that were referenced, but consistently, 2 a.m. is, like, the one that most frequently gets directly stated. Something happened at 2. So I'm just gonna read off the list that I found. I tried to write them all down.
Well, and while Joel's doing that, I want to point out, it's interesting that they would pick 2 a.m. specifically, because in a lot of, like, folklore and spooky stories, the witching hour is either midnight to 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. to 4. So 2 a.m. is, like, right in the middle of the two potentially spookiest times.
I believe one of the episodes says that 2 a.m. is when the night is the darkest. I don't know if that's true, but we certainly have seen associations between the monsters and darkness throughout different episodes. Alright. Episode 4, Page Turner, the one where the guy gets the book and he meets Mary and Gerard Key. He finds the haunted bookstore at 2 a.m. in the morning, and he comments on, like, loud metal music playing. The next episode, Thrown Away, the one with the garbage men, and one of them is looking for whoever was putting out the weird garbage bags. He sent a message, found him at 2:09 a.m., That one's even more specific than just 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
In the serial killer father episode, the mom went missing, quote, when it was dark and utterly silent. I'm writing that one down. It counts. Even if, it was some other time. Maybe they meant midnight. I'm writing it down. And the night of the dad's arrest, weird stuff. The shadow monster, the hunting, the darkness. It happened at 2:47. Again, very specific time. The ambulance in episode 12, First Aid, the one with the fire demon that was stabbed by Gerard, it arrived at 1:30 in the morning, which is 2 a.m. the prequel, and the horrors are there until about 3. And so, 2 a.m. was involved in the creation of this episode. I don't know which event was the first one that happened at 2:01 a.m., but 2 a.m. was involved somehow.
That was kind of the peak of the spoopery.
Yes. Lost John's Cave, the time when she started talking about take her, not me, take her, not me, that started at about 2 a.m. And in episode 17, The Bone Turner's Tale, the librarian went back to get the book in case his boss got in before him and was, converted by it or whatever. He went in at 2 a.m. So those are all the instances of 2 a.m. in the first half of Season 2. I'm pretty sure I'd go over the other instances in Part 2, but if I don't, email us or comment on the YouTube channel or something, because I have it. I have a document. We're red cork stringing this.
Yes, no, Joel is very good at taking data and writing everything out, making connections, so...
Here's something else that we didn't do the first time through this episode, but let's just go through. We have a column in our spreadsheet labeled characters, and some of these I don't think are super important. Like, every statement involves at least one name. None of them are, I was sitting in a room alone, I was attacked by meat. It's always, I was sitting in a room alone, I called my friend Ricardo Ramirez, and then I was attacked by a meat monster. But, like, Ricardo might not be important, might just be a name. But we have Saleza, a man who deals with stolen art and curios. He's from the mobster episode with the witch. Witches also get mentioned a lot. We never mentioned that in Part 1 or Part 2, but witches get mentioned a ton.
Do they? I only remember the one.
Just like a couple of different places. Like, there's like cults that were started by witches. There's people who try to look into demonology and witches, but like the word witch specifically makes me think that's going to be relevant.
Interesting.
Actually. We have the whole Lucas family. I'm pretty sure we talked about them, but they own different companies. We might not actually have any instances of that at this point, but they were in the Alone episode with the Graveyard Dimension. They were the weird family who were like, leave our family alone. So they're a bunch of weirdos. Gerard Key, super important. The story is telling you he's important. It's grabbing you by the collar and shaking you, being like, this man is important!
We'll talk about it if we record an episode for Season 2, but, like, secret MVP of this universe. Like, he's doing the real work.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a Maxwell Rayner who shows up. That's the detective who's working with the murderer guy, the serial killer dad. But the Rayner family... The name Rayner is important to one of the secret religious cults, and I'm pretty sure that there's just thousands of those in the Magnus Archive universe. Raymond Fielding was a kindly man who had a bunch of wayward children living in his house on top of Hilltop Manor, I think is what they call it. Pay attention to Hilltop Manor, super duper lore important. And then there was possibly Agnes Montague, who was
a witch.
Yeah, she was a witch, and now she's a ghost, and she seems to be able to set things on fire, maybe. Fire is either Raymond or her, but I'm pretty sure she's the fire one. Jane Prentice, again, another character that you would have to be not paying attention to not realize that she's important.
That lady is Bugs.
Michael Crew, as I said before. There's a guy named John in the Do Not Open episode. He just calls himself John and gives a man a coffin. I don't think John has come back. I haven't heard the name John with the same person in the description, but like, why would you do that? Why would you have a guy who has a very specific appearance, who delivers a spooky thing, and then not reuse them?
He's gonna be around.
Yes. And then another name that a name that is important, but I can't tell you why, is Sarah Baldwin. At the end of the Anglerfish episode, they list off the name of like 5 missing persons, and I have it on good authority that at least one, but I think like 2 or 3 of them show up in later episodes. But Sarah Baldwin, Kat and I have already had a sighting of where she is. I'm pretty sure we'll talk about that in Part 2. Those are all, as far as I can tell, the important characters that we should be paying attention to.
Not including the cast and crew.
Well, yeah.
I was really waiting for you to say Gertrude Robinson, so I could make and here's to you, Mrs. Robinson, Jesus loves you more than you will know.
Oh, that's a Fall Out Boy song, right?
No.
Oh, no, is it one of the big important bands? Was it, hang on, wait, was it Frank Sinatra?
Nope.
No. The Beach Boys.
It was from a movie.
It was the Beatles, wasn't it?
No.
What?
What?
Who sang it then? The White Stripes?
It's Simon and Garfunkel.
I don't know who that is.
What?
I know neither Simon nor Garfunkel.
No. Didn't they write that other song?
Probably. Most bands write more than one song.
No. Yeah, they wrote The Sound of Silence.
The
Hello,
what?
darkness, my old friend.
Oh, yeah, I only know that from the memes. I don't know the people who wrote it.
Well, it's one of the greatest songs of all time, so maybe you should throw some respect on their names.
Do you think I could tell you who wrote Livin' La Vida Loca? It's Ricky Martin, maybe? Yeah. Anyways, you think I can name who wrote that song? Apparently I can. But Anyways.
It is Ricky Martin.
See? I know things sometimes. Now, let's try to organically capture what happened last time we were recording. You had the outline for this episode open, and you got to the final item on the list, and you were surprised. Do you want to take our listeners' hands and guide them?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, the final item on our list of things to be discussed was Joel writes fanfiction, ? And I'm very curious, is it like a John Martin thing? What are you going for here with this fanfiction?
John Martin. Oh, right. I thought you were referencing someone first name John, last name Martin. I'm like, do we know a John Martin? No, John X Martin, John / Martin. You could do a John / Martin where they're kissing and then one of them slashes the other one. You could do a story where it is John / Martin because they're kissing, but then John slashes Martin and Martin dies.
Why would you do that?
Because it's right there. It's in the John / Martin.
No. Tell me your fanfic, you terrible man.
Did you hear about what the non-binary samurai do to their enemies? They slash them.
That's a really
My brain
funny
is
joke.
melting.
I love that
Happy
joke.
Pride, everyone. Anyways, I don't know why my brain actually came up with a semi-decent Magnus Archive idea. My original thought was, why don't we sit down and try to write one together? But then, as I was mowing the lawn or something, doing the dishes, my brain just went, what about this is the seed of an idea? And my brain went, I can grow that seed into a mighty tree. I don't know if I'm going to call this episode, or would call this episode, Siren Song or Beneath the Surface. But here we go. The opening, there is always a, here's my job and what I do, and usually that's related to the horrors. This character does not care. This character's like, listen, I just have a well-paying job where I can take lots of vacation. I don't care about my job. I care about the water. I love boat activities. I love water sports. I love being at the beach. Just anything related to bodies of water, but especially the ocean. The beach is their favorite place to visit. They love surfing. They love scuba diving, everything like that. Their friend, the victim, because there's always one in these stories, the victim wins the lottery and decides to book them an all-expenses-paid cruise for a month that's going to be traveling all up and down the coast. And they get off and they go to a place. It's a really nice place. I don't know anything about geography, so I'm not even going to pretend to be oh, maybe it takes place in Brazil. I don't know anything about Brazil. But they go to this place and they're going to go to a rental shop to rent inner tubes or surfboards or something. And someone behind them, a mysterious man whose name they don't catch, says something like, oh yeah, this place is great for tourists, but did you know there's a really cool place right over there? It's a secret place, I'm telling you guys, because I love you so much, it's a lagoon.
I caught the man's name, it's Simon Fairchild.
Could be a man named Simon Fairchild. Anyways, so the statement giver, the one who loves water, is I'm gonna go check out this place. Her friend is I'm gonna stay here. She goes, and it's a beautiful lagoon. It's the bluest lagoon you've ever seen. The water's so pure, and she finds a seashell. And I think we talked in this episode, that's about the priest episode, about how I think that the character should transgress and do something that sets the dominoes in motion. She takes this really pretty seashell. And you, the reader, our listener, are going to know, oh, that's the bad thing. And then she goes on the ship, and you know how these stories go. There's an escalation where, there's a small creepy thing, and then there's a big creepy thing, and then they're in too deep. So basically, she keeps having recurring dreams, and in these dreams, she is further and further in the water. She's back at the lagoon, and in the first dream, it's, ankle deep, and she's like, how did I get here? And then the next one, she's, waist deep, or something like that. And the final, all hope is lost dream is she is up to, her neck, but she's still standing on the beach or whatever underneath the water, and she can see a big thing, like a shark, like a leviathan in the water, and she can tell that it's coming towards her, and she knows that she's not going to make it, and she's holding this special seashell, and she's maybe holding it to her ear to listen to the beautiful sounds of the ocean.
And the sounds are getting louder
The sounds are getting louder. And then her friend is there suddenly, screaming over the sound of the ocean to be heard, and basically saying, what are you doing? And she grabs the seashell, and as she does, our statement giver wakes up, And she's like, oh god, that was incredibly scary. Both her friend and the seashell are gone. I think you could do a version of this where the friend just disappears, and then that's it. No one ever knows anything else about her. You could do another version where she wakes up and the friend is gone, and then like months later, a person matching that person's description is found back at the original spot where the seashell was found, having drowned or suffered like a boat accident. Or she could wake up and while she was asleep, boat accident or fell off the side of the cruise ship or something like that. But yeah, that was my fanfic. And maybe if I am up to it, I could do some research on coastal areas and cruise ships and stuff, and maybe I could come up with a full story rather than this 10,000 foot view.
No, I thought that was really good. Hear me out.
Right?
The statement giver wakes up in a weird spot on the ship, like surrounded by people, and maybe it's raining really hard and there's no reason for her to be on deck, and they're all panicking, and it turns out she had been sleepwalking. And she had sleepwalked to the bow of the ship and was going to step off. And her friend intervened and then slipped and fell.
Okay, I like that. I originally had the idea that the final moment when she was saved by her friend, that in some way she was being compelled to take her own life. Like maybe she was walking into the water, and if she got deep enough, she'd be eaten by the Leviathan, but she was safe in the kind of shallow area. And then the friend would be like, what are you doing? Stop. I don't think I would go that direction. I think there just being a loud sound and a monster that's getting closer is scary enough. But yeah, having now heard my my fanfiction twice, would you prefer Siren Song or Under the Surface?
Siren Song.
Yeah, especially if the really shell is making the
sound from the shell.
Yeah, I was trying to be very brief. I didn't want to do a 20-minute synopsis of literal fan fiction, but yeah, I think that one of the things about the shell that appeals to her, one, it's super shiny and like weird and unique, and two, I think that it sounds even more like the ocean than anything else.
Absolutely.
And that has been your do final thought. Statement ends.
If you like this episode, please let us know. We haven't decided yet if we're going to record for season 2, but we really like this show and we like hearing ourselves talk, so if you guys want to hear more, sure.
No spoilers, though. You snitch, you get stitches.
Don't say that.
You're like, oh, did you know in season 3, the character from Arachnophobia? Actually, the person from Arachnophobia is dead. But wrapped in a silk cocoon.
In your
spider
basement.
Cocoon. Yeah, I think in an actual basement. Yeah, how creepy. But anyways, if you're like, oh yeah, did you know that in this episode this thing happens? None of that. Don't ruin the fun. Don't ruin the fun. Anyways, have a good day.
Bye.
Well, friends, all journeys must end. And now today's journey has finished and we must bid you goodbye. We hope you have a good day, we hope you were kind to those around you, and we'll see you again. If you want to contact the show, you can do so at kingofthewhatpod@gmail.com. You can leave a comment on our YouTube channel or rate us on your podcatcher of choice.